We can't stop talking about it because we have a long way to go.
Welcome to the Last Catherine podcast.
Hi, welcome to Last Catherine. I'm Pallas.
I'm Robert John Hadfield. So, Pallas, take it away. What's in the blank today?
Okay. In an early modeling gig at an agricultural festival in Castroville, California, Monroe, talking about Marilyn Monroe, was named the state's first ever blank.
I can't wait to follow.
Okay. She was at an agricultural festival in Castroville, California, and she was named the state's first ever
corn queen.
Yeah, I was gonna say like Miss something.
Yeah.
Wow, I wouldn't even.
I'm trying to think of things.
I don't know anything about her anyway.
California agriculturally would be named for.
Artichoke queen.
Artichoke.
Okay.
I want to be an artichoke queen. That's awesome. Artichokes are delicious.
Marilyn Monroe is.
I see a Halloween costume in my future. I'm a Marilyn Monroe wig and an artichoke.
Yeah, I'm gonna be wearing her white dress and an artichoke.
An artichoke on my head.
That's really.
I was thinking artichoke dress, but either way it could be.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Spoiler alert, this is when we tell you we're talking about Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, yeah. So,
right.
So now it's time to introduce who's with us today. So this is the happiest day of my life. So all the equipment's working. I've got my favorite people in the world all in the same room. And so we've invited Julia Sola to be with us today and Erin Reeves because we're talking about Marilyn Monroe. And where this came from is, seems like everybody, so many people I'm interacting with these days, women, are just, I hear the word Marilyn Monroe come up all the time. People fascinated by her movies and by her persona. And it was interesting because she died, in 62? 62. She died in 62, and here we are 53 years later, and she's still a thing. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, we really need to do a couple of segments on Marilyn Monroe in the categories.
Yeah, he's honestly.
She's very happy.
Yeah,
or he's very happy.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we wanted to do today was jump into Marilyn Monroe and while she was alive, what was it about her? This show, of course, is we talk about feminist issues, and she's such an iconic figure for women. I'm assuming at the time, and then maybe even more so today in some ways. And so we thought what was it that made her who she was while she was alive? And we just want to talk a little bit about her life and what made her so fascinating while she was in the public eye. Back in this would have been 50s and 60s. Because she died at what age?
36.
She was 36 years old. So she made her appearance then in movies when? When did she start? When was she the artichoke?
I don't know. It didn't say.
I think you said 49.
Oh, did I say it? No, it didn't. It didn't say. An early modeling gig.
Oh, okay.
But it would have been right around there.
It would have been in the 40s.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wasn't her first role in All About Eve? Was that her first one?
Well, that was her first real role. She had like a one-liner in Scutta Who, Scutta Hey, and then Ladies of the Chorus in 49.
So I guess my question is, from her, let's talk about her career and her in the limelight. And so what made her, what turned her into the sex symbol that people viewed her as? So she was an actress, but then she got sort of sculpted by somebody somehow into this figure. How did that happen?
Well, she started out as brunette. Let's just be clear on that one. She
really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Her natural
hair color. Okay. She was sort of an auburn type color. And she got married off at 16 to a neighborhood boy because her foster parents were moving out of state, and otherwise she would have had to go back into an orphanage.
Yes.
So
where did she live? Where was that?
This was in LA. She was born and raised in LA, in and around LA. She moved around from foster home to foster home. Nobody really wanted her growing up, and her mother kept trying to take her back, and then that's a whole nother story. But while her husband was in World War II, he was off fighting, I think in the Pacific, right? She was working in an airplane factory, and a photographer came by one day to take pictures of the women who were working there, sort of as a morale booster. And she got her picture taken, and he was really impressed with her, and that just kind of started her off on the modeling path. And that went, and she got signed up to an agency, and when she got into the agency, they said, well, you should dye your hair. Okay, so she bleached her hair. then when she started getting into getting like movie agents, studio agents, she started getting, she like slimmed to the tip of her nose was another piece of plastic surgery she had. And there was, she did something to her chin.
She had a chin implant.
That's right.
An implant?
Yeah.
To make it larger?
Yes.
To make it a little more prominent.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm. And then as she got bigger and bigger parts in movies and she bounced around between studios with contracts, she started playing more and more into this dumb blonde role with, it's an old stereotype, where the beautiful ones don't have to think so hard, right? Mm-hmm. I looked it up and it actually goes back to like 18th century France or something like that. Is how
that stereotype.
That
stereotype. Was the blonde part of that stereotype in 18th century France, or where does the blonde come into play?
Yeah.
I think it started with the movies.
Yeah, and I think also when dyeing your hair and adding cosmetics became so much more prevalent. Blonde hair, became something that could be manufactured. You didn't just have to be born with it, and so I think because then you knew like all the work that went into making yourself blonde, especially peroxide blonde, like Marilyn was.
And the cost, too. So
yes.
I guess that's a status.
Right.
Yeah, especially if it looks in any way natural. That becomes more and more expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how old was she when that stuff happened?
Which stuff?
Well, when she was first discovered.
It was 46, 47, I would say.
I would guess that.
20, 21.
Okay.
So she was obviously very charismatic, because for the photographer to, modeling is hard because you have to play at the camera, so you have to be very charismatic with your face. And
she had a natural affinity with the camera. Very, very natural. It was just automatic for her, I think, somehow.
Wait, but what was she doing?
She was working in an airplane factory.
So she just had a job.
For the war effort, yeah.
Just working a job.
Yeah.
And somebody saw her.
The photographer came and said, "Hey, I want you to come and take some pictures." And it just took off from there.
Isn't that like such a stereotypical thing for young people to want? There's this idea that to be discovered, I'm going to be walking down the street of New York and some director is going to just look at me and going to see the way that I move and know that I'm the one for that part.
But then at the same time, it's amazing, but it's also so problematic just because you think, okay, she was discovered, but then she was discovered and they said, but we can make you better.
Yeah, you become a commodity.
Yeah,
Very
and it's
much
like,
so.
and you're like, this is okay, but what if we dyed your hair, we slimmed your nose, we gave you a chin implant, and then we did your makeup a certain way. So everything about her, like, to make her the star that she was incredibly manufactured. So I think, one thing that's very interesting is, now we live in the age of airbrushing, and, you see a picture and you say, oh, well, that's not what she really looks like. And it's kind of the same idea, but instead of being airbrushed after the fact, it was, okay, we're going to fix you before the fact so that by the time they see you, you're the way, you're the best possible version of yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people in the limelight still deal with that. I mean, they have people, doing their hair and giving them suggestions about their clothes and whatever. So they don't stylists. Yeah, they don't just get to be just who they are. They get to be the best possible version of themselves in the eye of what Hollywood wants to make you the most, the more people who like you, the more likely you are to get the part. So,
was there anybody more popular than her at the time when she was at her height of popularity, as far as women go?
Well, I mean, it was at the same time as Audrey Hepburn, Elizabeth Taylor.
I'm wondering,
Katharine Hepburn.
When did she become... So, obviously that wasn't her first name. Elton John taught us all that.
Yeah.
And
no, she was born Norma Jean Mortensen or Baker, depending on if you're looking at her birth certificate or what she was actually called. And then she became Norma Jean Doherty.
Wait, what does that mean? What happened?
What do you mean?
Well, she had two different last names?
Well, her father, she never knew who her father was.
Ever?
She had an idea, and we can't prove it one way or the other. She thought Charles Gifford.
Okay, I was say I don't know his last name.
Charles Gifford. Charles Stanley Gifford was... She thought he was her father. Her mother had a picture of him in a house that they shared at some point. And... but he never owned up to it. There's never been a DNA or a paternity test. There's never been anything. But at the time, her mother was still married to a man whose last name was Mortensen. So I think he was listed on the birth certificate as the father, but her previous name... Cat's having an epileptic fit over here.
That is awesome.
My rabbit used to do that. That's so cool. Yeah, Baker was her first married name?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. When she, they married the nice gentleman who went off to war. That's where she acquired the Baker.
Okay.
So why? So okay, here we are following her life, and now she's out of the airplane factory. She's in front of the camera. Her hair is blonde. She's getting these roles. She's playing the dumb blonde role, probably from the producers. They're probably encouraging that.
The studio heads, yeah. They thought they had no respect for her. They thought she was just the dumbest thing, but they knew she was pretty.
Right.
And they obviously knew she had sex appeal.
So, because I know her more. I mean, I don't know much about her. I want to know more about her, but I know her more from her, I guess, her modeling stuff. I mean, all the pictures that you see of her and her outward when she'd go to parties and like be this personality. And so, how did she go from acting and then she sort of just became a walking advertisement of female sexuality?
Well, and I think it was one of the first times too that sexuality was really played into it to the extent that Marilyn played into it. You know, I mean, it was kind of like women could be accidentally sexual or, you know, kind of coy, or if they were sexual, they were like the villain, you know, where they had bad intentions. And Marilyn really made it okay to be beautiful and sexy just for the sake of being beautiful and sexy. And, you know, she had this figure that really wasn't traditional, and in fact, after she started becoming big, other studios were eager to copy her success, and so that's how we got the introduction of Jane Mansfield, because the rival studio was like, hey, we need a blonde who's curvy, you know, so that we can put her in our movies. So just this idea that that this was this new way of looking at a woman, and that sexuality was okay, and that, you know, as a man, if you wanted to be attracted to a woman for these reasons, it was okay. You know, she really played into that. And again, going back to why all of a sudden, you know, why did it work? There was a story that was related about Marilyn, and she was, I want to say they were in New York, and she was with somebody, and they were just walking down the street, and nobody recognized Marilyn. And she said, but wait, do you want to see her? Because she can come out. And all of a sudden, she just stands up straight and starts walking, and she just, you know, starts flirting and oozing, and all of a sudden people go, hey, isn't that Marilyn Monroe? But it was just this ability that she had to turn Marilyn on, if you will, and to be Marilyn, and to also then not be Marilyn.
Like an alter ego.
Yeah,
pretty much. In fact, there are a couple of movies where you'll actually see you'll have one actress who plays Marilyn and one actress who plays Norma Jean, and then even after Marilyn comes out and is, you know, the person who's interacting with the public, you still see Norma Jean as sort of this alter ego interacting with her, like in the background. And it's really interesting the way that the two of them, and a lot of, sorry, that's a weird sound.
It's thumper.
And there are books that are written, fictional, obviously, that play into that as well, with, you know, Norma Jean being like a voice in Marilyn's head.
So she's almost a caricature of woman,
very much so.
Of woman. And so I wonder, did she? Because obviously she co-created that persona alongside the producers or the studios that were sort of saying, you know, be more blonde and be more ditzy or whatever. So she's like, okay, I can do this. I can pretend. Do you think it was a shield for her? Do you think it became sort of a way of her dealing with the world?
In a way, probably. I think it became a burden, especially as later on when she started wanting to do more serious roles, and the studio kept saying, you know, she was so successful in the dumb blonde roles and in the cutie musicals that they kept giving her to do. And so she ran away to New York and started her own film company, production company. Really? And she started taking lessons at the Actors Studio, which was very Marlon Brando was there. I mean, it was a big deal. And then her next, she started working with, she did the Prince and the Showgirl with Laurence Olivier. She, her next few series of movies, there was a piece of the dumb blonde in there, but it wasn't as prevalent. Yeah.
What age was she?
Yeah, when was all this happening?
She was almost 30, I think, when she...
So this was in the mid-50s?
Yes.
Yeah, this was 55.
Okay, so all this happened. I mean, this is a lot of stuff condensed into a very short period of time, really. I mean, she shows up on the scene, and within just a few... Well, wait a second. She started out modeling and then moved into acting? So how did that happen?
Well, it really wasn't uncommon then for studios to handpick people based on their looks, and they would cast based on looks. So
That's still not uncommon. That's still
yeah, there you go. Yeah. And so I think it's not a far-fetched idea, especially back then, because then studios also back then would get you under contract, and then you could only make movies for them. So all they had to really do is sign you. And even some studios would, they could sign you just so that others, even if they didn't really have any roles or know what to do with you or know what your look was yet, they would sign you so that other studios couldn't try to take you. So it was a very different time, just because, like I said, it was more about the studio and the what kind of movies the studio wanted to make and the vision of the studio versus, if you were truly epically talented or...
So you had a photographer that discovered her. And then somewhere along the line, she ended up in her first movie.
Yeah, she had a couple of agents. She had a couple of lines in... like I said, she had one line in Scudda Who, Scudda Hey. She had a lead in Ladies of the Chorus. And then she got a couple of breakthrough roles in All About Eve and then Asphalt Jungle. And those were really small parts. She was only on screen for like 5-10 minutes tops. But she made enough of an impact that she got to be like the lead in a, the big lead in a movie, like Niagara. And then, further and further along down the road.
So when did she become this household name across the country, across the world? I mean, when did that happen in respect to all these the movies and what have you?
Probably about 53, I would think, with Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
And she was a lead in that.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a big musical with Jane Russell.
Yes. That's my favorite Marilyn movie also.
Wait, so. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes?
Yes.
But
yes.
What's interesting about that, though,
is... Just because it's factual. No. True,
though. Okay. Yeah. But what's interesting is Jane Russell was paid something like $400,000 for this movie back in 1953.
And she was actually considered the star.
And she was considered the star. Marilyn didn't even have a dressing room, and she was paid like a couple $100s a week. And Jane Russell had to put her foot down and say, no, she needs a dressing room because she's the blonde, and it's Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, so she needs to at least have a dressing room. No, that's how little the studio thought of her.
Well, and that tells me that she maybe wasn't very good at sticking up for herself at that time. I mean,
she tried to fight it, from what I understand. She did try to fight for her own. She's trying to get, improve the terms of her contract and trying, in this case, try to get a dressing room. But she didn't have much clout. The studio had Daryl Zanuck, he did not like her on a personal level. And that was it.
But she gained a lot of clout later. I mean, she sang to the president, right?
Yeah.
That's something we all famously know.
And that's important. Did she have an affair with John Kennedy? What's the truth there? Come on.
There is one.
You're jumping.
You're jumping. You're jumping like 10 years here.
Okay, back up.
There's 10 years here.
Okay, where were we then?
We were in 1953.
You can answer that question in a minute. We were in 1953. 53. So that's when she became. Was she ever Norma Jean in a movie ever? Like that was she was as soon as they discovered her, name changed.
Yeah. Well, legally her name didn't change her name until 56.
Oh, she legally changed, like. Okay.
But several years after she, quote unquote, mated.
Okay.
But so she kept her name, her Norma Jean name, for years after she was a big Hollywood star.
Do we know who gave her Marilyn Monroe title?
A couple of different stories. It was Mona Monroe for a while. That was
really.
Yeah. Monroe, I think, was her mother's maiden name. I'm not sure where the Marilyn came from.
So then she was in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Was that the breakthrough? Was that the breakthrough moment then that made her the household name?
To make her household name?
Yeah. I mean, what was it that... How did she get to that point that she was everywhere?
Gentlemen Prefer Blondes helped.
I think the Playboy issue
Okay, so
helped.
tell us about that.
So in 1949, she wasn't working very much for whatever reason, and the story is that she was hungry, and she agreed to pose nude one time for this one photographer, and I think the condition was that if his wife was in the room. And it became just this calendar photo that just went around, but Hugh Hefner decided to include that as his first centerfold for the Playboy magazine in 1953.
Yes.
So the same time that she's breaking out into big-time movies, this Playboy issue comes out, and it's got Marilyn Monroe on the cover, and it's got a nude Marilyn Monroe on the inside. And remember, this is in the 1950s. You can't, I mean, there's no way that a nude woman could have a place in society. A woman who takes her clothes off. I mean, in the middle of the Leave It to Beaver, make room for daddy type of era, this is just not acceptable. This is just absolutely not acceptable for 1950s. But, she made jokes about it. I had nothing on but the radio. I was hungry. I needed the money. And somehow she just managed to turn it into a plus somehow.
I'm so conflicted by that because on the one hand, like, she was hungry. So how often do we see our culture currently and past sort of dangling the carrot in front of young women's mouths and them taking the easy route and saying, okay, well, this is an easy way to make some money. And I think if you want to take your clothes off, and pose nude for some sculptors or whatever you want to do, then, cool, run around naked. That's cool, whatever you want to do. So her motivations are sad to me in a cultural viewpoint, because it feels just like she was given a choice, but it was an easy way and she didn't have a lot of options. And then she's also representing empowerment in a way in my mind, but then the fact that it's Playboy is not empowering. To me, it's not. I mean, some people probably have an argument against that, but it's owned by a man. It's driven by a man.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
So why did she take? But she didn't take it for Playboy. She took it for a totally different reason. Though. What was what were they going to use it for?
What was the whole point? It was just a pinup thing.
So she didn't get paid what she should have gotten paid.
She
probably
got paid $50. Yeah.
$50.
But I think the more interesting part of it is that when they tried to make a scandal, like, oh, we have these naked pictures of you, she was kind of like, yeah, there I am. I was young, I needed the money, oh well.
So she owned it.
Yeah,
absolutely. She didn't try to.
And I think that
push
also
it up.
Exactly, and that also kind of goes back to the idea, like I said, she made it really okay to be sexual, for the first time. Like, hey, yeah, I've got a body and it's pretty great, and people want to look at it, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. And it's okay for men to want to look at women. And I mean, nowadays, you might kind of go, well, but back then that was really. And anytime you had something like that, it was a pinup, or it was like hush hush, or it wasn't really out there. Like, guys didn't walk around and announce, hey, got this naked picture of this gal, everyone want to take a look. That it wasn't out in the public like that. And so with Playboy, and then with Marilyn being on the first cover, she really helped, for better or for worse, usher in this idea that it didn't have to be private anymore. Like, it could be in the public specter.
Wow.
And sexuality was okay.
Yes.
So I kind of see a contradiction sort of happening, which is very human. But, she's out there and she's very sexual and she's very, allowed to have her sexuality, while at the same time she's playing into the coy, girlish sort of dumbness, of the sexuality. And so she's really manipulating her own expression of sexuality to fit the molds that these studios and these producers are saying works, which is fine because that's what's gotten her where she is. But I wonder if she was allowed to just express her own sexuality, and if that meant having dark hair or whatever it meant for her, what that would have looked like, because that influence was there regardless.
Well, but also Marilyn had always suffered from, when she was younger, from low self-esteem. And one of her more famous quotes is that she always said that little girls should always be told that they're pretty, even if they're not. And she felt that when she was a child, she was never admired for her look. She was never told that she was pretty. And then she got older, it was only from, outsiders telling her, and as she changed herself and she got that recognition from outside, that she really found her self-worth. And I think that's something that she always struggled with as well, was because even though she did try to be, independent or valued for her smarts or her acting ability, she always had that nagging insecurity in the back of her mind that unless somebody else was validating her, she wasn't going to have any worth.
Women during that time, regardless, their beauty was part of their worth. Nowadays, we look at beauty in, at least myself, look at beauty in a much more broad sense, and we are beautiful people. But back then, though she wanted to be validated for her intelligence and all of these things, that she was deep in her personality for, her beauty still remained the thing that she measured herself up to, as well as the rest of the world, because that's the culture, that was the prevalent idea of what womanness was.
Yeah, definitely. She became the height of femininity. She became the idol of femininity. Mm-hmm. And, how do you get past that?
Yeah.
So that's interesting then, because when you say that, how did women react to her?
That was my question, yeah.
Okay, there you go. How did women react to this whole thing? Because here's this woman that is more overtly sexual. She's now been, a centerfold in a nude in a magazine. And what was the reaction of the public from a woman's standpoint? How is she seen? I know today she's this iconic figure, but at the time, was she an iconic figure to women? What was she?
I think they were relieved when she got married.
I was going to say, everyone liked her unless she was flirting with your husband, Yeah.
Especially when she married Joe DiMaggio, who was the big new baseball star, and when she married Arthur Miller, I think there was maybe a collective female sigh of relief. Mm-hmm. But I think it would have been easy to resent her. In the same way that I think we resent the Kardashians nowadays, the quote unquote no talent, they're just there because they're beautiful and they know how to market themselves, which kind of, she didn't have a lot of education, but she had a lot of common sense when it came to promoting herself, which is one reason why she got as far as she did. So, I kind of cringe from making this comparison, but she was kind of the Kim Kardashian of her day. So.
But she was a really smart lady, though. She was, like you said, she came across as a dumb blonde, but she knew what she was doing. She
was definitely a reader. We know she had a lot of heavier books in her personal collection. She was a big fan of Abraham Lincoln. She used to carry around a biography of his, almost everywhere she went for a while. She wanted to play, was it Grushenka in the Brothers Karamazov, which is a Russian novel. She had a very good understanding of politics, and she was really smarter than people gave her credit for. And a lot of it wasn't education based. A lot of it was self-taught. So, because she never graduated high school. Once she got married, that was it, at 16.
Oh, because she was married before Joe DiMaggio.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell us that story. What happened? What was the...
Well, she got married off at 16 in 1942 to a neighbor boy because her foster parents...